On today's episode, we'll talk about starting out shooting punk shows, the importance of hindsight, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Law and Order, and of course, your first time driving the camera Uhaul in New York City. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Are you someone who needs custom-made cables for your camera or Steadicam sled? Well, fear not, because the sponsor for today's episode, Custom Camera Cables, can take care of all of your cabling needs. 30 colors and custom lengths means your new BNC or camera cable will be exactly the way you want it. Don't delay, order yours today at customcameracables.com. And while you're at it, mention us and use the promo code THEOP and you'll get free shipping. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I'm Dave Kamaitis, your host, and I'm coming to you from over the internet today with a fellow operator in New York City named Niknaz Tavakolian. She has been in the business for a little bit as an assistant. Just a couple of things here. Third Watch, which I worked on, but I don't think we worked on together. Oz, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, seasons 1, 3, and 4. And FBI, seasons 1 and 2. As an operator, Fire Island, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, season 5. Law and Order, Organized Crime, Etoile, which is sort of the newest show to come from the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel people, I think, which I want to hear about. Day of the Fight, and a bunch of other stuff. As a student, she had a film that made it into the Philadelphia International Lesbian and Gay Film Festival, which is kind of cool. And I'm really excited to talk to her because we've actually never met. Niknaz, thanks for being there.
Thanks for having me. Super psyched to have this conversation.
Jim McConkey told me all about you, and also who else did I say? Oh, Liza Bambanek just was like, oh, you got to have Niknaz on. So I'm very excited to talk to you.
Two good friends of mine, two really phenomenal humans. So that's means a lot to me.
Where's Niknaz from? What kind of name is that?
Yeah, so let's get this over with, right?
Sorry, does everybody ask this?
No, it's actually a part of how I see the world. So I think it's appropriate.
Cool.
I was born in Iran, and my parents brought me here, or we came to the United States when I was very young. And then, revolution and war happened. And then all of a sudden, my father's PhD stretched to 12 years. And I became this young, this way presenting person. In other words, very non-binary, kind of queerish. And we stayed in the United States.
What year did you come to the United States?
Well, now, is that going to give up my age?
Well, I didn't say how old you are. You're okay. All right.
We came in 1977.
Oh, okay. So you came like that was in the thick of like the revolution and all that?
Right before.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. Right before. So had I stayed in Iran, I would have been a child of the revolution. I would have had a completely different upbringing.
Yeah.
Completely.
And do you have family there? Do you go back to Iran?
I don't go back to Iran, but I do have family there, quite a bit of family there, yeah.
So you basically grew up in the U.S. then?
I grew up in the U.S. In fact, that's part of it, is that I was this American kid. And my mom anyway, was like, I don't know if we can call. Yeah, of course they could have taken me back and it would have been great and no problems. But I really assimilated very quickly.
It would have been tough to like pluck you out of here and drop you back into Iran 10 years later or whatever. Yeah.
People do it. And In fact, it might have been great for me to go back and forth, but oh well.
You never know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the grass is always greener. So tell me, how'd you get to where you are? What's your story?
Well, I'm a Steadicam operator now here in New York, finishing up season 5 of Law and Order Organized Crime. It's my first show as the B camera Steadicam operator. As I should say, my first show as a full-time Steadicam operator.
Cool.
I did several features as a Steadicam operator, features as a B camera operator, and a series as a B camera operator, conventional but not Steadicam. So um, it's been a long, circuitous route, but I feel like I'm where I want to be and where I belong.
Uh-huh. Did you want to be in movies since you were a kid? Were you like one of those kids?
My father had a dark room when I was, I'd say, 6, 7 years old in the closet of our 2-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia when we were growing up, or when I was growing up. And I think that's where the spark first got ignited, to watch someone create an image and see it come through. And then from there, I kind of lived my life in high school photo world. Uh, Being an Iranian, though, of my age and with my family, the expectation is to either be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, um, or something in that world, in that sphere.
Steadicam operator was not in that list.
Oh, photographer, artist, whatever. No, there's no way.
That's what you do on the weekend.
I think they still don't understand what I do. I
If
try.
it helps, I'm a full blown American, and I'm not sure my parents completely understand what I mean. My dad's a doctor, and to this day he'll call up and he'll be like, "You're not working? No, I'm not working today. Well, you have anything coming up? Well, not right now, but something will come up. Well, when's it gonna come?" Like he can't handle it. So sometimes I just lie to him because it makes him feel much better. It's just, I think we all fight that. But
Yeah, totally.
were you into movies as a kid though? Like, were you one of those people who like constantly going and wondering how they did it and whatnot? Or
I wasn't wondering how they did it. I loved image making. I went to the movies all the time. I mean, one of the memories I have of being very, very young is going to see E.T. and then staying in the theater to watch it the second time.
oh, no way, that's great,
Yeah.
awesome.
The real bug, the real bug of cinema, I think I caught when I was in college. I was expected to be the scientist. I was in physics. I was way more into being social and partying and having a good time, like I think any 18, 19-year-old,
Right.
rather than trying to do math and science and Excel spreadsheets or, whatever. And I was sitting I needed an easy A class, and I was sitting in the history of rock and roll, it is a class that's based on the multi-part series
Oh,
on PBS.
cool.
So I watched with other people in a classroom instead of at home on PBS, the history of rock and roll. And I might have still been a little fun from the night before. I don't know, but I just remember sitting in that class and thinking, what am I doing? Because this is all I want to do. I
Wow.
just want to make documentaries. I just want to follow musicians. I just want to, make images.
So
basically.
you really had like a light bulb moment.
I did.
That's
did.
amazing. That's amazing.
2 days later, I went to my guidance counselor, or my counselor, whatever it was, and to the disdain of my parents, I switched majors at a science-based university to film. And Drexel University, bless their souls, had maybe 2 professors who taught film, but they were great. So we had Super 8 cameras, and we had, they would show us Antonioni films and Fellini films, and that's where I really came alive. I mean, that's where, for me, cinema happened.
Yeah.
I will never forget sitting in the class and watching Weekend, and the one scene, the scene with the cars and the person walking through.
Yeah.
That
Amazing.
Yeah, it is incredible. So from that moment on, I was inspired, and my grades got better. um,
Wait, what were you majoring in before this?
Physics.
Physics. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a little bit
physics
of a
was the
change.
most,
Yeah.
yeah, it was the most philosophical of all the sciences.
Yeah.
So I,
All right. Hey, why not?
also one of the most challenging, and hardest with all the math and whatnot. Um, so to just lay the land a little bit, this is the 90s. This is the mid 90s, early 90s. The riot girl scene is starting to happen. It's definitely happening in Philadelphia. The queercore scene is happening. I'm there and I'm a part of it. Um, Philadelphia specifically did not have public access, and why that was a big deal. Well, public access is where a lot of us were um, going out and filming these shows and putting them places, but Philadelphia didn't have that. So
Oh.
the head of the Drexel University television station, which aired on, you remember the TV where you would change the channel?
Think, 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 think.
Think,
Yeah.
think, 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 think. It would air on TV. Um,
By the way,
the head,
we should probably for younger people not only explain that, but explain what channels are because they won't
yeah,
understand channels. No, we won't go into that. But it was a great time, people. You missed out on a really cool thing.
my God, yeah. If you didn't have enough money, you had to get up off of the sofa and walk to the tube and turn a dial.
Yep.
And then you
Yep.
had the up dial and the down dial.
Yep.
Did
That
you
was
want to
the
go to
UHF and VHF exactly.
exactly
And then you had to actually turn the outside ring to tune it in. It
tune
was
it in?
crazy. It was a crazy time. But okay, yeah. So
It was fun time. So the head of the Drexel University television station took it upon himself to create sort of like a public access, and what that meant was it gave me a platform to go out and to basically go out with these high eight cameras that he had and shoot these crazy punk shows and have a platform to put them out.
that's great.
It was really great. And then he also would hire me to, I don't know what he saw in me, but he hired me to come shoot these performances at the Painted Bride Art Center, which is kind of like BAM. It's like a BAM for us, Brooklyn Academy of Music for us.
Okay.
And I would get paid to be a camera operator. It was so cool.
That's
At like
so.
19,
These
20
were
years old.
concerts or like musical concerts or
These were well, the shows that I would go do were musical. I mean, they were just punk shows. I would,
yeah
go
yeah.
out but these were performances. So there were dance performances, musical
Oh,
performances,
cool.
different cultural events. Um, so that's where I knew it was kind of inevitable. I knew where I was doing what I loved, and I knew that this is the direction that I need to take my life.
Wow.
Um,
And the things that the concerts that you were doing just for yourself, were you shooting them and editing them were you like soup to nuts
oh yeah,
everything?
soup to nuts, the whole
And
9 year. I was sitting there on it, and it was pre, Avid or
oh
Final
yeah,
Cut. I'm
two
sitting there,
tape
two
machines and stuff.
tapes.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
Well, first I had to lay it on SVHS.
Okay.
So then I'm sitting there mentally logging, and then from SVHS to other SVHS. And then I got hired at the station I was basically the guy that would take all the formats and transfer the formats to whatever we would use to broadcast, which I think was 3/4 inch.
Probably. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was like that's how I spent my youth. And it
That's
was,
kind of an amazing thing because I would guess that there weren't a lot of rules and there weren't a lot of people like watching over you, so you could just go, I wonder if this works, or I wonder if that, do whatever you wanted to.
yeah, I mean, that's where I learned about backlight, and that's where I learned about like how to, it may go to dark, it'll go to dark very, very quickly, but if you have even a little bit of a rim light, it looks badass. It looks pretty freaking cool.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And would you usually go out and do these yourselves, or would you have it was just you and a camera and that's it?
Oh yeah, it was just me. I mean, that was the thing that was really cool is my friends were putting on the shows, or my friends would be in the shows, or my friends were at the shows.
Yeah.
And it gave me I'm a sort of socially awkward person, or at least I'm shy. So it would give me something to do while I was there.
Sure. Like you're hiding behind the camera. I'm
Yeah,
not
it was
really here.
awesome.
I'm just doing this.
Yeah. And also, the bands got to know me. So that was cool.
That's a blast. Wow. And so
Yeah.
how you did that all through college, or how long did you do that for?
I did that for a couple of years in college. I worked at DUTV all throughout college. So I left Drexel at some point and went to a more robust film program at Temple University.
Oh,
Um, Not for any other reason than they stopped funding me at Drexel. My parents said you need to go to a public school. So I went to Temple, and I gotta say, I don't know how you feel, but at at this stage, I feel like I've been, every step of the way, I've had, unicorns guiding me, and I just feel very blessed,
yeah.
non-religiously blessed and
Yeah.
lucky, because I entered Temple University at a time where their graduate program was known for experimental filmmaking, and their undergrad class was, they had just divided broadcasting and film, and so film had there was an ingestion of if it wasn't money, it was attention to the program.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we got to play.
That's fantastic. I think
Yeah.
I would agree with you. I mean, I always feel the same way, but I think you only realize that in hindsight, right? I mean, at the time
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, this is happening and this is cool. And you just sort of go with it. And it's not
Yeah.
till later that you realize like how you kind of hit the jackpot on so many levels.
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
And so you went there, you went to Temple for 2 years, like,
It ended up being 3 years because I had to make up for some, lost physics times.
for sure. And so you were a straight film major there.
Straight film major. Straight film major. I was still working at the Drexel University television station, so I was like obsessed. I was obsessed, and you could not get a camera out of my hands.
That's great.
Yeah,
Well,
it was really
only
fun.
video, or did you shoot film as well?
I shot only film,
Only
except for
oh,
the video was the stuff that was going to be broadcast, or
I got you. Yeah.
But when I got to Temple is where we could use 16 millimeter and their ARESs and SRs and blah blah blah.
Those old
And
ARESs with like the turret, and
oh yeah,
we used to joke at NYU that there were a couple that you could faintly see the Nazi insignias on the side. Still,
oh my God, yeah, right.
they were sold, but
That's
they
right.
worked like a charm. They were great, and they had that little cool like thumb hook
The
that
thumb
you
holder.
hold on to, which is really
Yeah, totally.
uncomfortable but worked really well. Yeah, those things
Totally.
were great. That's fantastic. So,
Um,
so what'd you do after you got out of school? Was it just like right into the business, or?
Well, so this thing happened towards the end of Temple, through the end of college. These LA filmmakers came into town to Philadelphia, and they were making a documentary on film, which people were still doing at the time, but a lot of people were moving over to High 8
Yeah.
and Betacam to film their documentaries. So this was a fun treat, and they needed somebody who knew how to load film. So they came to our classroom and they chose me. Of course, I was like the first to raise my hand, and they chose me, which was awesome. So I went out with this team of like 6 LA people, and loaded film and schlepped gear. Basically, I was their camera assistant, camera PA, camera tree, whatever, on a documentary about the fires that were burning in central Pennsylvania due to
The coal mine?
the coal
Collapsed
mines, yeah,
mine? I forget the name of it. It's like perpetual fire, underground fires. And
underground
did
fires.
you go to? I don't know, remember the name of the town, but did you go to that town? But it's like been.
Centralia.
Yeah, Centralia. That's right. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I've read about this place.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Not only would we go, they took me to Centralia. They put me up for several days. They fed me. I loaded their film. I schlepped their gear. They also, it's the middle of Pennsylvania, and anybody who's from this area or this region knows that Yingling Lager, or Yingling, is a beer of Pennsylvania. It's
Okay.
known in that region as well. So we'd put down a $10 bill, and we would just get just so much alcohol. That was my first
Like, this is
foray
great.
with film people, around film, outside of academia, outside of the university. And, it was inevitable that I would, go that path.
Yeah, that
Go
would
this
pretty
path.
much seal the deal if ever if it even needed to be.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question about that because maybe I mean, this is, maybe you remember this, maybe you don't. So these people who are professionals come into your class.
Hmm.
You've never worked on anything quote unquote professional before, right? You put your hand up and say, I can load. And obviously you can load, but I'm assuming you don't really quite know if you can do what they're going to ask you because you don't know how much and how fast and whatever. Do you just kind of BS? I mean, like, are you, what's the head game like when you go into something like that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I was known in that class as being the sort of techie person who I was the person that, grad students would use to help them with their camera stuff. So
Okay.
I was sort of, you don't know what you don't know. So all I knew is that I knew cameras. And if there was anybody in this class, it would be me,
Okay.
you know? So I had no idea what I was up for. I had no idea what it was like to like roll around a small cart. I mean, it was like, I think it was a small mag liner, not even with a top shelf. Anyway, yeah, so no, I didn't need to bullshit. I just
Wow. And
did it.
actually, I mean, I'm kind of geeky this way, but that's a really cool first project to work on because it is one of those things that like no one's going to Centralia unless they're doing a documentary. I mean, like I've actually wanted to go there, and it's like you can't get close to it and whatever. There's still like two people living there or something. That's really wild. And how long was that? How long did you do that for?
We were out for probably only 4 days.
Okay.
We did some B-roll and shot a couple of interviews, maybe a week,
Yeah. All
something
right.
like that.
But it was enough to give you a taste besides that and the beer that this is where you were going. And were
Yeah.
you specifically thinking like I really want to be a documentary filmmaker at that point
Yeah.
as opposed to this that was it. Yeah.
That documentary and also experimental filmmaker. I mean, that program was so focused on nonlinear or not nonlinear. I'm sorry, it was nonlinear storytelling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. That's very
Um, yeah, I was very lucky.
cool. Uh-huh.
Um,
And so did that end up turning into something after that? Or you went back to school? You were in school still,
no,
right?
yeah, I was still in school, finished school. I had friends. So my roommate at the time, her sister was a camera assistant in New York by the name of Claire Cario. So I was really good friends with Claire's sibling, and so I knew Claire. Claire would come to town. We would hang out. Claire knew that I was into film, and she knew that I wanted to come to New York and be a filmmaker. Now, Claire Cario was the focus puller on Boys Don't Cry. She did The Believer.
Wow.
She worked with Jim Deneau. She did The Incredibly True Adventures of Two Girls in Love. I mean, she was known. She was in that indie world in New York.
Mm-hmm.
She's no longer in the business. So when it was time for me, when I was finished school, I knew Claire had my back. So I knew I was going to move to New York. I knew that, that was what was going to happen, but I wasn't quite sure how. Now, you had asked me, or you were wanting to talk about some stepping stones that maybe were uncomfortable to get you to where you are.
They're always good to hear.
So I'm trying not to call it failure because I feel like failure is such a negative thing, but actually, and people out there, I'm sure, have had the same feeling, but as you grow and as you move from one stage of whatever it is, your life or your career, to another, there are growing pains and you're going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna fall. I don't know a single football player, not that I know football players or that I even watch football, that hasn't been tackled, right? It just is it's par for the course. It's what happens. So Claire calls me up. She's like, listen, I'm going to shoot this short film. Why don't you come and do sound on it? And I thought, well, I know how to thread a camera. I can thread an Agra. No problem.
Yeah.
Here I go. It was, maybe 2 or 3 days in some Boston or something. So I go to do sound on this before I moved to New York, before I started working in the business. And wouldn't you know it, I don't know. I know the mic was plugged in. I just don't know what
Oh,
you had to push in order to make the recording lay down on the Nagra. But day one, there was nothing,
oh, that's
nothing. And I felt awful because these people are putting their like blood money into this is their money. This is,
oh yeah.
they worked hard to get this short film and they got Claire Carrio to shoot it. Um, so that was my first kind of, oh shit, you can really fuck up.
So did you come back and do day 2, or did they get someone else?
They let me do day 2.
And I mean, how'd you get? So I'm assuming at the end of day 1 you knew that there was nothing. That's when you found out, before day 2.
Oh no, they called.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I'm saying they found out before that.
Yeah.
And I mean, how'd you deal with it? Like, what'd you do?
That I don't remember. I just remember feeling like totally devastated.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe they didn't. Maybe that was the end of the job and they didn't call me back. I just remember being completely devastated when that phone rang and they
Anybody
said
responsible would be. Yeah. Yeah.
there's no audio. But I
Wow.
know that some audio was recorded at some time because I watched the movie and I remember anyway. It doesn't matter. My one sound thing doesn't
Sure.
matter.
Well, but at least it determined that you were not going to be a sound person. So we're all
It did.
thankful for that.
Exactly. That was,
At
yeah.
least
So
we're-
I know how to thread a camera, but I don't know how to use an Agra. That's 100%.
My version of that was that when long before I was ever ready to do something this big, I was DPing a short film, and the assistant director came up to me and said, "Hey, there's a Tony Kaye commercial. Do you know who Tony Kaye was?"
No.
Tony Kaye directed American History X, but he was also a massive um, commercial director. And he was known for being completely out of his mind and really hard on people and whatever. And they said, look, there's a Tony Kaye commercial and they need a Steadicam operator tomorrow and they can't find anybody out. Can I give them your name? And I'm like, I mean, I'm exhausted, but like, that's a lot of money. It's like more than I'll make next month. And yeah, sure. So they gave it to me and I worked all night and I threw my Steadicam in the car and I drove out to somewhere and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And they tell me, go build the Steadicam. And I realized that the one base plate that I had that connects the camera to the Steadicam was on my practice video camera in my apartment because we hadn't used Steadicam on the short film. And I realized I'm completely screwed. And I just went up to the producer and I was almost, I think I might've been crying. I don't remember, but I explained it to him and he's like, all right, here's the thing, get in your car and leave. We're just going to tell him you couldn't make it. Like if he sees you, he's going to rip your head off. Like, and that was, I will say, I never forgot my base plate again.
Wow.
I would have bought another one, but I couldn't afford one at the time. But so we all have these things, and I think we hopefully we survived them. I'm sure there's some people I'll never talk to that didn't survive them, but
yeah, that's true.
The good people survive it, and you realize it happens to all of us. Is what it comes down to.
It does. It happens to all of us, and you remind me that we do need to have doubles of the most important things.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, now it's like I look in my case and I can't get rid of anything in my case because I'm afraid that I'll need it. And it's like, do I really need 40 BNCs? I probably don't, but someday I will. And if I get rid of one, I'm screwed. So it just grows and grows. But
so true.
So you shortly moved to New York and started in the film scene there?
Yeah. So Claire she gave my name to this production company who was they were making something like $1 million movie, which at the time was, I guess it would have been whatever it was non-union and very small.
Sure.
And they said, hey, listen, we need somebody to load film and drive the truck. And that's what low budgets were all about. Then.
No, it's incredible. And it's like it's always like you look back and like, how was I driving the truck? In New York,
God,
by the way.
Dave.
In New York.
In New York. I said, I've never driven a truck through New York. And they're like, no worries. We'll give you a map.
Yeah.
So armed with a map. And by the way, I'd never loaded 35 millimeter. I said, I've loaded 16, but not 35. Don't worry. They'll teach you. I mean, that should be a red flag to anybody, right? Yeah. Don't worry.
Yep.
So, I'm driving this 12-foot cube truck full of, I'm sure, $1 million worth of, CSCs, ARRI cameras and lenses and whatnot. I'm clipping. I feel really bad. I'm 23 years old. I'm clipping the mirrors as I'm going by down Houston to
Oh my
get to the
God.
different locations. I'm trying to figure out how to get to Brooklyn. Can I go through this bridge? Can I take this tunnel? I don't know. I
Oh,
rented a room in Park Slope for $300 a month. And I blown the money from my parents. I got the money from my parents. Uh, and by the way, I wasn't going to get paid.
oh yeah, of course not. Yeah.
So that was my first film, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, that really was my first time on a film set. And, you know, the year was, let's see, it was 1998.
Okay.
And some people were nice, some people were not. And I was so young, I had no idea. I just remember day 1, 2, and 3 just standing by all the gear, not knowing what was in any of the cases, what these names were, what is, what's the 6x map box? Why are we using that over, what's this 4x map box?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
What is all of this stuff? And that focus puller, I can't remember his name. He looked at me one day and he said, "You're lazy, aren't you?"
Ooh.
And I was like, "What?" He said that to the person who would wake up the morning, go to the lot, pick up the truck, be
Right.
the first one, open it, unload the gear, and then load the truck back up, close the gate. So I think at that moment, I'll never forget that moment because it taught me what optics are, and that I was doing what anybody would be doing. I was observing, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's my personality or my shyness, but I didn't feel like I could ask questions, and I certainly didn't want to be in anybody's way.
Yeah.
But it all ended up fine. The second assistant taught me how to load the film, and by the end of the first week, I was loading the film. I was driving the truck, and I was learning all the gear, and it all worked out fine.
That's great. Do you remember the name of the movie?
Yeah, it's called Low Life.
Okay. Is it any good?
No,
Yeah.
no, 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 and it went straight to video. It was one of those you knew it was not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It had
Yeah.
Nicolette Sheridan and somebody else. Anyway, I can't remember.
All right.
But there was a day on this movie where, I mean, I won't even tell you the time that I, almost ripped out the dark room, and we had, there's these signs that say, no clearance past 6. Well, I don't know what 6 feet is. I don't drive trucks or, so I did put dents in this thing.
Oh, jeez.
But there was one day where we had 2 cameras downstairs on one floor of this. We were in Manhattan in some high rise. 2 cameras handheld downstairs. Up on the roof, there was another unit that was shooting some rooftop something on the 5th floor. And I was in a photo dark room loading film. That's where they found a place for me to load, somewhere in between. So I spent the entire day on an elevator going downstairs and upstairs and just loading film. And between 2 film stocks, too. Just loading and running and making sure nobody ran out of film. And by the end of the day, it may have even been 6-day weeks. It was something outrageous. Whatever it was nuts. That job was nuts. By the end of the day, I had something like 30 cans of film. And the darkroom bench was just piled high. And I started crying.
Oh my
how am I
God.
going to do this? Because I now have to do all the paperwork, and then I have to load the truck.
Oh
And then
my.
I have to drive it back
Oh
to the lot. And then I have to take the subway because I don't have any money
yeah.
back to my $300 apartment.
Wow. Yeah, well,
And
basically, like you're wrapping and you've got another 5 hours worth of work to do.
it was so devastating.
Oh God.
It was devastating. But there was this day player on that day who became a really good friend of mine, who is also no longer in the business, but his name is Mikey Jackson. And he said to me, "I'm going to be here till the end. I'm going to help you, and I'm not leaving until you leave."
Oh.
And then he said, "And you should ask them to pay you."
You're probably like, wait, that's an option? I didn't know that was an option.
Exactly. I didn't know.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah.
I didn't know.
And did
So
you?
yeah, so the next day I said, you would have to, for what I did yesterday, you would have to pay somebody to do what I did.
Yeah.
So can you please pay me? They said, sure. How does $50 a day sound? I was like, yes,
That's great. Good for you. That's fantastic. Good for
yes.
him for saying something.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that was my first film.
Well, but it is one of those things that, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, and
Yeah.
I think when you are new, you do tend to sort of stand off at the side and go, I don't know where to, because everything's moving so fast and so crazy. I don't know where to jump in, and I don't want to be a problem, but you want to help, but you don't know how to help, and it's sort of, so you trip over yourself till you figure it out. I think that's the key to it, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right.
that's amazing. So that was what, like a 4-week show or something?
Something like that. Yeah, it must have been 4 6-day weeks. Yeah.
And so did you come out of that basically going, I may not be able to drive the truck, but I can, I can load. I mean, did you feel like you were a loader at that point? Like you like, I can go onto a set and do it?
Yeah, and in fact, the next month or whatever, within the time that I had that apartment, I got called to do a PJ Harvey music video, and
Oh, cool.
man, I thought I had made it at that
That was,
point.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
That
that's
was
great.
it. I was like, this is it. I'm living in New York City. I'm working on films. This is my dream. I'm
Yeah,
living my dream. And
yeah,
there's
yeah.
PJ Harvey.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great. That was a. I actually, I don't know about you. I don't know if you did them for a while or whatever. I actually miss music videos a lot. I mean, they were a grind. There was there was no question that, because there was never enough time, and there was always too much. And there'd be those great things where it's like, all right, we only have the talent for 30 minutes, and it's like, what? It's their music video, but that's another story. But I always loved doing music videos because it was just like there were no rules, and it
Hmm.
was music, and hopefully you got to work with someone cool that you actually liked it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was always a blast.
It
Um,
was. It was really innovative. And I have to say, it's really too bad that music videos aren't what they were then, because it would be so much fun to leave the TV world and do music videos for a little while, or cut my teeth on music videos instead of cutting my teeth on,
yeah.
the shows that I'm cutting my teeth on.
Well, it was that area where it's like, again, because people were, a lot of them were low budget, and they were just happy to be getting something you could learn. I mean, I've said it, I don't know how many times on this, but I really learned how to do Steadicam with this company called FM Rocks, and it was
Mm.
for quite some time. I was I do a couple music videos on a weekend, and Maddie Libatique was the DP,
So cool.
and Mike Bauman was the gaffer, and it's just like,
So cool.
I mean, I haven't gone to where they have, but those guys are the top of they're the top of the heap. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, I
So
think you have. I
I've
think
done
you have.
no, I've done all right, but I'm not putting myself in Maddie's position,
Yeah.
but or Mike. But yeah, it was like we were learning, and it was just like, what happens if you turn this light on, and oh, the Steadicam can turn upside down and whatever. So, yeah. So how long did you load for before did you? I'm assuming you moved up to assisting at some point.
Yeah, so then I spent time. Okay, so yeah, so then came the indie world, and I was a loader. I was Mikey introduced me to other people, and Claire, of course. I went off and did movies with Jim Deneau and Terry Stacy as
Love Jim.
their,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
as their loader or second assistant, depending on if it was 16 or how big the budget was, or
Hmm.
what. And then I got into TV and started assisting in TV, and that's where I was on Third Watch. But what's interesting about that era is that while there really wasn't a lot filming, and I think we're entering into a time that's going to mirror what that time was like,
It might be.
where you kind of had to save you would make great money on a show, and then you saved your money because you didn't know when you were going to work again.
Yep.
But I was not, in those days, Third Watch was a one camera show. And I don't know if ER was the same.
Yeah, ER was. I mean, kind of they were just starting, I think, to become 2-camera shows, but it wasn't popular. No, ER
It
was.
wasn't a thing.
West Wing was too, by the way. West Wing, we would shoot
Yeah.
a scene in the what's it called, in the Roosevelt room with that big oval table, with
Uh-huh.
8 or 9 characters with one camera, and it would take an entire day to shoot the scene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wild. Yeah, exactly. And we don't imagine that now.
No, no, not
And
at
I'll
all.
talk a little bit about the irony of that third watch as an assistant. Was one camera starting like you guys were on ER to do multicam, and then going to a show like Maisel where it's two cameras always
Yeah.
on the truck, but one camera is really doing the meat of the work,
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
like the old days.
Yeah. 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 In a way, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So who was the operator on when you were on third watch?
I don't remember the first season I was there who that operator was. I know that the very first season was Guy B, and then after that was Mike O'Shea, and
Oh
O'Shea
wait,
was the guy that
you were on back then?
I was on with O'Shea. I started
Okay.
maybe the very end of season one, maybe, and then season two I would start day playing. So I was what
Well,
we
then
would call
maybe
the
we
everyday
worked.
player.
But maybe we worked together because when Guy B moved on to producing, they brought me in for like an episode or two to like till they found someone, and then I came back a year later and I directed an episode.
Then
Uh,
we definitely crossed paths.
I'm trying to think of who my
I
operator was.
do remember actually, when I was thinking about, the last couple of days since you asked me to do this, I was thinking about those old days, and I do remember hearing about someone from ER coming in.
That was me.
So I'm
Probably.
sure we
Yeah.
must have crossed
Yeah.
paths.
Yeah, because Chris Chulak called me up and he goes, guys, moving on, and I just want someone who can just like step right into his shoes until we can find someone else. And I was like, yeah, I'll go to New York for.
Yeah.
Actually, the main thing that I remember about that was, and there's a lot of stuff, but I shipped. I wasn't used to doing location stuff. Like I'd been on ER for so long, and I've been a West Wing and whatever, and so I didn't have like my shipping, my shipping. I don't know what you want to call it. I didn't have it all dialed in, and I got
Uh-huh.
this huge plastic like foot locker thing, and I threw all sorts of stuff in there, and I put 2 padlocks on there. Or no, they weren't padlocks; they were locks with keys, but they were like heavy duty padlocks. And I got to set, and the night before, I realized I hadn't brought the keys. I'd left the keys at home. so 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 I literally am like spending the night. I'm like in New York. I'm calling locksmiths. I'm like, can you come and do that? And of course, I didn't even think about it. I get to set, and of course, I mentioned it to someone. They're like, oh, we'll just get props over here, or the grips over here, or whatever. And they got one of those big chain link fence kind of thing, kink kink, and that was it. And I hadn't slept the entire night because I was like, I
It's
can't believe I'm
so
gonna show.
funny.
I'm supposed to be the guy who's coming in to make everything go easily. And I forgot the keys at home. So note to everybody: if you're
Yes.
locking stuff, have extra keys.
Yes.
Again,
Keys
never
in your
happened.
wallet.
Never happened again. But Third Watch
So funny.
was a great show. It was really like
Awesome.
I remember like Brooke Kennedy was the executive producer, I think, and
Yeah.
the cast was really great. And
Yes, they were.
also like Guy sort of set the table and just like he did with ER with me. Where it was just everybody was dialed in and it was just professional and they had a great time. Glenn Kershaw was the DP.
Yes. Yes, he
Yeah.
was.
And I never met Mike O'Shea, but I just recently met him teaching a Steadicam class, and he's just like he's a great guy. He's just an absolute blast.
He
Yeah.
is a blast.
Yeah.
And that was the that was the young Mike O'Shea when the world was, there were rainbows everywhere and possibilities and potential. And no, he's incredible. He's the guy who taught me. O'Shea and I also did season 6 of Oz.
Okay.
Again, I was a film loader. And it was after Oz that he went on to do Third Watch, and I was super psyched for him. So we both went on to Third. But I mean, I was a day player on Third Watch. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
So it was this one camera show that was starting to do this run and gun. It was for those who don't know about Third Watch, it was following the NYPD, the FDNY, and the FDNY emergency services, or I'm sorry, why can't I remember?
Basically, like cops, fire, and paramedics, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and paramedics,
it was
exactly. Yeah, thank you.
The third rotation of the day, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. So it's 6 p.m. to midnight.
Yeah.
And we were starting to film it in more of this, like, rather than it being a procedural, which I think some of the cop shows have been,
Mm-hmm.
NYPD Blue or whatever, we were doing it a little bit different. And there was a lot more running around and handheld. And so this one camera show was multicam. became this multicam show. There would often be a second camera, so everybody would bump up. It was awesome. Those guys were great. They were phenomenal technicians. So they would bump up and bring in a rotation of us, and then I hooked in for several seasons back to back and became an everyday player with them.
That's
And
great.
eventually started seconding with them, loading and then seconding, and it was the best. I don't know how else to describe it, but it was better. It was the best learning. It was the best playground to learn. Boot camp. It was like boot camp. I don't want to have an analogy. I don't want the analogy to be too much like war,
Yeah,
but it was maybe like being in an emergency room where you are moving very quickly and you have to do it correctly, and you just have to do it and do it well and do it right and do it fast.
yep. And well, but the other thing that I think, and it's specifically about that place, because it was such a great group of people, and not to say it's the only one, there are other ones, but there are some places that aren't like this, is that, yeah, you have to do all that, but like when someone stumbles, everybody picks them up, and
Yeah.
and it's very much a family, and it's very much, we're not going to let you fail, you know. So
Yeah.
which is always a great place to learn. So did you eventually pull focus on third watch while you were there before you left? You got up to seconding.
No, I got up to seconding, and then I did third watch. I think The Education of Max Bickford, which was a short-lived show, but that was the one where all the unions were watching because it was The Education of Max Bickford was the first high definition show that was being filmed.
Oh,
That was being filmed in television style rather than with pedestal cameras, which
Yeah.
is how HD was or video was being
yep.
filmed before or being captured before. So the unions were looking at my position. Was I a loader? Well, I'm not a film loader, but am I a loader? Am I a utility?
Yeah.
What union is it going to fall under? Louis
Wow.
Rothenberg was our DIT before there was a DIT, such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was laying down onto tape from his cart. So, we had all the snake cables, and I mean, it was a whole thing.
Wow. I mean, that must have been head spinning as far as just like completely a new way to do things.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'd open the case for the camera, and there would just be cables coming out of like there were cables everywhere.
Whereas before that, there was
It
basically a
wasn't
video
like that.
cable. There was a video cable and there's a power cable, and that was it.
And that was it.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
didn't, I mean, it was like so simple. I mean, it was very complicated, and of course, the mechanics of the movement and all of that.
Sure.
But yeah, there was no Teradek. There was no, I mean, even before Teradek, what was it? Oh my God, what did you have to have always as a Steadicam operator?
Oh, the
You had to
Modulus
have-
2000.
Yeah, the Modulus 2000.
And before that,
Yeah.
it was even these other completely illegal that I'm sure took years off our lives that went to like one. I remember the one that I had. It was in like a gray box that with no marking, and it came to one channel. That we're talking about transmitters for anybody who doesn't know, because they were illegal because they transmitted on actual television stations. Yeah,
Yes.
it was crazy what we used to have to do, but
Yeah.
nonetheless. And so, what did you eventually move up to focus pulling on? What show do you remember?
Well, so what's interesting is that after that, I needed to take a little bit of a break. There was, for whatever reason, this is after 9/11. I was in New York at the time. It's now 2003, 2004. I'm in this new budding relationship, and I was doing this really great experimental stuff in college. And I was, I'm now in my mid to late 20s, and I want to deeply go back. I want to go back to making films. So I actually left the business for a little while. I started pulling focus on, student films and whatnot, but I was definitely working my way towards that, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that in the industry.
Yeah.
I wanted to make, I just want to make films. That's all I wanted to do.
Well, I mean, was it, I'm only guessing here, but was it sort of like you're looking at your trajectory and you're going, I'm going into like network television essentially, and this is not what I originally fell in love with, and I'm not quite sure. Because I know
Exactly.
that does happen with a lot of people, is like you're on the ride and suddenly you look back and you go, wait a minute, this isn't this isn't what
Yeah,
I signed up for. I'm
this
doing
isn't
something
what I
really different.
wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I went from doing indies as a loader or second assistant, running around with Claire Carrio and Terry Stacy on a small little movie uptown, upstate New York
yeah.
in the snow. And then all of a sudden I'm working, I'm walking onto a film set where a bus is like falling over
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's our set, with 7 cameras and IMOs. IMOs?
Yeah.
I think
I almost
that's what, yeah,
those
they're
little
little IMOs, little crash cams.
little, oh no, they weren't wind up, they had motors, but yeah, the little crash cams, it was like all
Little,
steel. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, we'd stick them all over the place. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like you understand it because you sort of do get caught up in the machine a little bit, right? And then you go, wait, this, not that I don't like this and not that I'm not happy with, but it's not what I started out doing. So
Yeah. And it was hard. It was really hard. At that time, things were hard. It was hard to bump. It was hard to move up. I, was not necessarily what I signed up for when I got, so lit up and excited about film during that, documentary shoot.
uh-huh.
It was different, and I was surrounded by a lot of different. Just it was very different, and there were not a lot of people who look like me. Again, for those who don't know me, I, I'm very open about being queer, and I don't look like, I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Muslim, I'm just different, and there isn't anybody who looks like me on a film set.
Well, and also I was going to ask you just on a very specific note back then, because I lose track of things back. So Third Watch, which you seem to have done a while, you said was like 97, 98, something like that in that era.
That was 2000.
That's
I
2000.
started probably 2000, 2000, yeah,
Okay.
99, 2000, 2001.
Were there, was it rare for there to be a woman in the camera department still, or was that not really something that you noticed?
There were very few. I mean, I could count on my hands how many female camera assistants there were,
Okay, so that's what I sort of lose track of when it was like it didn't become unique to go, oh, there's a woman on our crew, as opposed to like,
Yeah,
no, of course there's a woman on our crew.
yeah.
So that was still back then. So yeah, so there were a lot of reasons that you sort of stood out. Did you ever feel? I'm not talking about Third Watch specifically, but did you ever feel pushback from people, like because you were sort of at the beginning of that wave, or did people accept you?
Um, I mean, I think what it looks like is it looks like you just don't bump. I was definitely accepted. I mean, people, I looked funny, and I think the people who didn't accept me just didn't hire me. So there were definitely shows that I never worked on in the city, but I got to work on, like, Sex in the City and Oz and all of those new HBO shows. I went down and worked on The Wire for like maybe a week or two.
Oh wow,
So like people knew I knew people knew who I was. It was a
hmm
small community then,
yeah.
especially in the television world. So if you knew that pace and you could do that, then you were called.
Yeah, yeah, which is good. I
Um,
mean, basically they don't care much about beyond. Can you do the
yeah,
work, which is what you would hope for in an ideal
yeah,
world, right? Just people who are good.
yeah.
Um, that's good to hear that you didn't feel pushback. So you said you left the business. Did you
I
leave
love
the
the
business?
business.
But leave the business meaning to try a different part of the business, or like I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going completely away.
I wanted to be an artist. All throughout this time when I was working in TV and in the indie world, I bought a Bolex. I would go around filming. I would, do time lapses. I was always making and creating and always trying to keep my visual eye, um, that muscle. I was always trying to work that muscle.
hmm
So I had it while I was still in my 20s. I wanted to go back and I wanted to try it, to try to become an artist, to try to become a filmmaker and an experimental filmmaker or a photographer or an artist. So, so my partner and I left New York. we moved to Minneapolis. I worked at a college working in their film program and um, got access to their photos, their dark rooms, their color and black and white dark rooms. And I was shooting short ends. I would re-spool short ends into my camera. And there was one place that would process motion picture film. I guess there's some part of the emulsion you have to wash off first before you send it into the developer for color film.
Okay.
And so I would get these 35 millimeter, I'd get the negatives back 35 millimeter, and I could blow it up to 40 by 60.
Wow.
And it was so cool. I had so much fun. I had a
But
lot of fun.
is that basically what did you sort of teach at the school in order to get access to all the stuff that you could then play around with? Was that the idea?
I worked at the school, ironically, fixing their ARESs and getting I organized their gear in their equipment room at
Oh, so
the
you weren't teaching, you were dealing with
I
the
was just
gear
working.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. But I mean, the question I guess I had is, was that sort of the design behind it? Is like, I
Yeah.
can go there and work, but I can.
But I can work on my reel. And so that's what I
great.
did.
Yeah.
I was building a portfolio. I had access to these really great professors, and they looked at my work. And one professor, her name is escaping me, incredible, represented here in New York in some art gallery. She said, I don't know about your photography, but your video art is very good.
Wow.
So I applied to grad school, and I got into grad school in Toronto, and I went out to the York University in 2006 to 2008, and I got my MFA in what they call time-based art. So I got to do film sculptures, interactive video, interactive art. I did photography. I taught video art.
Wow.
But the best part is I read and read and read. I read, critical theory around the image. I read about, Deleuze and Guattari. I read about simulacra. I read Baudrillard. I mean, these were the things that were inspiring what I ended up making. So for a couple of years, I had a studio in Toronto, and I was making art, and I had a solo show, and that got covered. I had a solo show in a gallery downtown, and that got covered in an art magazine in Toronto. And I felt really good about that era. It was really freaking cool.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, look, that's incredible on so many levels. I mean, it's incredible that you actually achieved what you were sort of going after, but it's also, you had something good going on, and you basically walked away from something, I don't want to say easy, that's not the right word, but a bus that was in motion.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things to do, because you're stepping into the unknown, right? And so I mean, this is probably a stupid question, but was that fulfilling? Was it sort of like, this is like, I feel like I'm alive, and this is what I was intended to do?
I at the time, I said to myself, this is the best time of my life.
That's awesome.
And Naz, you better enjoy it. And it really was the best time of my life. I had nobody, there was no director, producer, there was no anybody telling me how to do what I was doing.
Right.
I was just making, and people were responding. I mean, that's the part I think that I took from that into this career that I have now, is that I got to make and understand, when I was making this image, this imagery, this texture, and the things that I was doing, I was able to tap into it and to present it to other people and to have them respond. And so I understood that pipeline. And that was really very precious to me. That time is always going to be precious.
That's amazing.
And I also knew that once I left Canada, it's a very different market in New York, in the States. Art in Canada is subsidized by the government. There are artist-run centers. I mean, it's a very different beast. And at least it was then, in the early aughts and later aughts, than it is now. I think it's a little bit more commercial, like it is in the city or in New York or in the West, the United States. So I ended up leaving because my partner couldn't get a job there. There was a big part of me that was considering staying and becoming a professor and being an artist and living that life. And I don't know what that would have looked like. I don't know what sphere that would have been, but my partner couldn't find a job. But she did find a job in New York, and New York, I knew that I always had that to fall back on. I always had the film business to fall back on. So I said, fuck it, threw caution to the wind, came back to New York and said, all right, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to try this. I'm going to see what I can do here.
How many
And I got a
years had
couple
you
of,
been gone?
I had been gone. I left New York in 2006, and now I came back in 2000. I left New York in 2004, but I was still flying back and doing jobs.
Oh, okay.
Like I would day play for a week on like I worked
Yeah.
as a second on the interpreter, and then I would fly back and whatnot. So 2006 I left the union. 2008 I came back to New York, and got a job at the City College of New York, which is a part of the CUNY system. So it's a city-run state university. And City College was to be at one time the Harvard of public schools for New York. So the campus is that, well, at least this building that we were in, is this beautiful Gothic building with these detailed gargoyles and 4 or 5 floors of just absolutely dreamy, beautiful old architecture.
Wow.
So I came back and got a job running their film studios. A friend of mine, Joya Speciale, who used to be an assistant in New York, who then went on and was a DP on different reality shows back in the early days of reality, told me about it. So I applied for the job, got the job, and then little by little, they didn't have anybody who knew anything about film, and they needed to teach film to their undergrad students. So then I started adjuncting at City College, and then a set of unfortunate circumstances happened, and there was a position open for a full-time faculty member, and they offered it to me. So for 1 year, I was an assistant professor at the City College of New York, teaching grad and undergrad film programs.
Wow.
And all the while, I was trying to get myself out there as an artist, and I think I figured out pretty quickly that I didn't want to, like, playing the game is not for me. I don't know what it is. I know the politics of film. I understand what the role playing is when you walk onto a set.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have the chops to do it as an artist, and not in New York, not in this market, and definitely not enough to make a living.
Well, it also
And
seems like up in Massachusetts, up in Canada, from what you said, you got a taste of like what it could be like.
yeah,
So it must have been harder to come into a situation like New York, where there's a lot more commerce going on and
yeah,
whatnot in the art world, and just not
yeah.
wanting to be a part of that.
No, I don't want to make commercial art. That's pure. That's like the purest thing. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know.
Wow.
So, what I found out that year is that I also didn't really like being a professor. It wasn't really my jam.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think the thing that I really figured out during that time that I was at City College, which is several years, at this point it's 2012. The thing that I really figured out is that I'm not an auteur from beginning to end in terms of film. So I'm not going to make a short film. I'm not going to make, I want to be the one who's holding that camera. I want to tell the story visually. I'm very comfortable behind the camera and not anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I realized. And so that made teaching filmmaking to people who did want to be auteurs a little bit different. It made it different. It's just not my jam.
Yep.
So I called up my old pals and I said, listen, I think I'm going to get back into the business. And a good friend of mine, Becca Venezia, who at the time was one of the biggest assistants in New York, second assistants, was doing the pilot for vinyl, and she said, "Well, why don't you come be our camera PA for a week and see, just test the waters, see if
Yeah,
you
right.
like it." So in 2012, or 2011 or whenever it was, I went out and I was a camera PA for like a week or two on vinyl, and I was like, yeah, this is where I belong. This is where I belong.
Do
So
you think that actually I have two questions that I've been thinking
yeah,
about. One is, do you think that you needed to like leave Temple and Drexel and all that and go into the film industry in order to leave it to do you think you would have had the success that you had and enjoyment that you had as an artist if you hadn't sort of gone out and done other things first, just because you're in a different place in your life and all those other things? Do you think that instructed that somehow?
I don't know about the years in TV, but I do know that I was very much informed by my years in in the indie world, like
Yeah.
doing indie films.
Yeah. Okay. The indie
Like,
films. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like watching a young Jim Deneau light was like nothing you've ever seen. I mean, it was just really very cool to
Yeah.
watch and to see where he would, what he was highlighting and why. And um, TV, I think what that did was it afforded me the tools. So I got to buy the cameras and, and play
Yep.
and do all the things that, you know, got my juices flowing.
Hmm.
Um,
But it's fun. The reason I ask it is because as I'm listening to it, it's sort of like, I mean, you just put a little more into it, but it's like, it seems like, the indie stuff made you go, oh yeah, I love this artistic stuff and I'm learning and whatever. And then maybe going into the sort of like standard TV world, if you want to call it that, needed to happen in order to kick you out to go
yeah,
do what you did. I mean, it's like,
it
I,
did.
it's so often, I mean, it happened with me and it continues to happen with me actually, but it's so often, I think everybody sort of thinks that like, I got to figure out, I know my kids are, 20 and 22 and it's like, what am I going to do? And what road am I taking? And what's the path and whatever. And it's like, sometimes you got to go down those paths that end up not being the paths that you would take to learn that they're not. And you learn things within those that actually inform you down the line to make you even stronger and better in what you do. But I sort of hear that
Hmm.
throughout your story, which is really fascinating. And I did have
Yeah.
another question about that. Oh, so when you got back on set as a PA and said, this is where I belong and this is what I want to do in this world. I mean, was that a struggle? Was that hard to sort of close the door? I mean, you're never going to close the door on being an artist. You're always an artist, but like on making that your vocation, if you want to call it that, or whatever, or what was being in New York enough to go, I don't want to do this here, and I'm here, so I'll do something else. Like, how did that?
I think there is, let me see how I can say it the most gracefully. So I was, forget it. There's no graceful way. I was broke. There was just no money. I wasn't making any money. I mean, I saw my friends around me who were working for artists. I mean, they were working for accomplished artists. I color graded this really incredible artist's film that was in the Venice Biennale, and you saw like I got to do fun things and cool things during that time,
Sure.
but I was so broke that it doesn't work for my temperament. It doesn't work for who I am. And it's not that I need to make money. It's
No.
just that some people that fuels them. And honestly, in the film world, what I found is that a lot of people who can make it as artists don't have to worry about money. And I did, and I do have to worry about it. I need to put food on the table. I myself, I don't have there's no one else who's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's reality. There's nothing wrong with that, and I mean, I think everything, especially when you're an artist, everything is a trade off between. I need to make sure that I'm my needs are met, whatever those
Hmm.
are, and that
Yeah.
I can continue this, and I also want to express myself. So I think that's all part of it.
Yeah.
Um, so did you
So,
jump? Did you get back into focus pulling pretty quickly then? Once you got into that world, or did you have to
no,
build
you would
back up?
think. Wouldn't you think that's the way it goes? You just pick up where you left off. No, and at this point there now I was on a mission. I knew I'm back. I'm back in the film business. I call up my pals Lee Vickery from Third Watch and I say, listen, I'm back in the business. I called up Pearson Silver call up all of my old pals,
Yep.
and I got a job as the full-time loader on Blind Spot, which was a 22 episode TV show about a woman who has, I don't know if I can say it with a straight face. She has all tattoos all over her body that each each one cracks a code for the FBI.
Oh my God. These are the shows where you're like, I really want to be in the pitch room when someone pitched this idea. That's amazing. And this didn't go on to be a 10 season hit.
5 seasons. 5
5
seasons.
seasons?
And it was huge in Japan.
Blind Spot.
Huge.
I'm checking this out. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I worked on a TV show that was only 1 season, shockingly, called Blind Justice. I just made me think of it when you said this, but it was about a blind cop. Okay.
Oh.
And here's the funny part. Ron Eldard was the actor in it, and Ron did such a great job pulling it off and making the unbelievable believable. And but the like, you know, and it was a formulaic series and whatever, procedural, I guess, sort of. And the reason that it didn't work was that the crimes were so sort of Murder, She Wrote bad. Like it was like the thing that wasn't hard to buy was that the cop was blind. The thing that was hard to buy was that, like, in the 10th minute of the show, everybody didn't realize that the florist did it. and I remember he would come in and he'd go, "Do you realize what I'm doing here?" And they can't write better than they, like, it was amazing. Yeah, it was incredible. But anyway.
Man.
Wow, 5 seasons. Sorry, I'm gonna have to find this on streaming. This sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, find a couple of them.
5
Why
seasons.
not?
So did she get more tattoos as she went along, or something like?
Honestly, I left after season 2, so I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if they like disappeared. They became, like they lit on fire. I'm not sure.
That's great. I love this business. That's
I'm
fantastic.
not sure.
So that kept you for 2 seasons. So you at least were making some money and living.
I was making some money, but the thing is that now I knew what I was doing. And the thing that I think is really interesting is that I lived all that life as an artist, and there was somewhere within me that it wasn't satisfying me completely, no matter how much I enjoyed being in Toronto and living an artist life and having a studio and all of that came with it, and being known as an artist. There was something that was just it didn't come together. And it started to come together, and I was on a fast track. So the first year I was the loader, the second year I was the key second. And then from there, I owe my career to a bunch of people, and I'll talk about, obviously the McConkeys later in this, not too far later. But Lee Vickery is a good friend of mine and a career focus puller, and just such an incredible person. He was when I was coming up in my 20s, when we were in our 20s. And he was really phenomenal. I mean, he believed in me, and this is the thing. You, in this business, in any business, you need somebody it's not that you need somebody. It's great when you have people who are around you who believe in you. Yeah. And he pushed for me to start pulling focus, and so we did another show. I was his second assistant, and we did another show where I would go off and be the A focus puller on tandems and still be his second, 7 other days out of the episode. So that's when I started pulling focus. I was on a fast track, so it only took a few years from there, but I didn't pull focus for too long because I knew I wanted to be a Steadicam operator. I mean, at some point, when I was working at City College, I had them buy little glide cams, and I had them buy whatever the itty bitty Steadicam is, where you have the all Velcro vest, and I don't remember what it's called.
Zephyr, I don't know. There's so many different Archer or whatever. Anyway, but I don't know,
whatever it was. And I actually asked Saad Mustafa to come and show the class.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It is a great guy. I just met him again recently, but what a great guy. That's fantastic.
Another Third Watch guy.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, maybe I did know that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, he was an electric on Third Watch.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I knew that's what I knew. I wanted to be a camera operator. I knew that I wanted to be behind the camera, so it was just a matter of getting there. So I spent a couple of years as a focus puller. I mean, this is where I think I should pause and just say, one day the phone rang and my good friend Becca said, "Hey, there's this show. I'm being called for. Do you want to come and be my second assistant? It's like a 5-month show, something like that. It's called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We're going to be B camera. I hear the B camera doesn't work too much, but Gregor Tavener is going to be our operator,
Oh,
and he's really
geez.
great, and we're going to have a good time. And Jim McConkey is on the A camera, and David Mullen is the DP, and Eric Monnier is the other one. And I was like, sure, that sounds great. I'm going to leave Blind Spot and go do that. And I think that's the show that really changed it all for me.
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
So you were a second on that. Did you pull focus at some point as well?
So I started season 1 as a second assistant, and I didn't do season 2 because before I started Maisel, I was bumping as a focus puller, and in fact, when Becca left to do Orange is the New Black, I filled in and I pulled focus on it. But I mean,
Yeah.
Yes. So then I came back. So season 2, I was bumping, and I wanted to focus on getting to the next place, so being a focus puller. And so I didn't go back season 2. And the A camera focus puller, first assistant, Anthony Capello, called me and said, "Would you like to come back season 3 as the focus puller?" And Jim McConkey takes the phone and he said, "Also, there's a movie. And so, B camera doesn't really work so much, but this is a really great opportunity to learn the movie and to be a part of this like new thing that we're doing. And you don't have to tell me twice about doing something fun and different." And that was really exciting. And so, of course, I said, "Hell's yeah, let's do it." So I got to join
What a
them.
great show to be a part of on so many levels. I mean, first of all, to be able to watch, if you want to be a Steadicam operator, you get to watch Jim McConkey run around on
Yeah,
a daily
no
basis.
kidding.
And also someone who's so giving with information and time
Yeah,
and everything, just such a wonderful person and an
yeah,
operator. And then,
yeah.
having Larry come in here
Oh
and
my
there and
God.
do stuff. And then this is a perfect time to say, by the way, and I will link to this on the page, but Jim did a breakdown of that big
Mm,
triple movie handoff on was it
hmm
last episode of the show, right? Which you
hmm
were the second operator in. Yeah, so
hmm
you can see the behind the scenes, and you can actually see Naz grabbing it and handing it off and whatever.
hmm
It's really cool. Um,
Yeah,
it's
that
a
was
very cool
awesome.
shot. And those guys just
Awesome.
continued to push and push and push. It was amazing. What a great thing to be a part of.
I tell you, Dave, it was a masterclass every single day walking onto that set.
I'll bet.
And I feel so privileged and so lucky to have been able to see and watch the first Magnetic Release, season 1, where Larry McConkey came in and did it. And, I know, to all the young people out there who are watching this, who are maybe not in the business and who know who Larry McConkey is, let me tell you, I thought I knew who Larry McConkey was. But season 3 and 4, when I got to work with him, because I was holding on to his gear, his movie, and I had to know that movie. And it's not just the movie. He's on the phone with Tab, the lead developer over at FreeFly, saying,
Yeah.
"Here, this is the issue. We need to fix it." And and we're pulling out the log from the movie and emailing it over to them. I mean, like, it was just
He's like
incredible.
he's a complete mad scientist in a very good way,
Oh,
and I mean both of them are just. It's really fascinating to watch how, like, I've watched them problem solve things. Most Larry more than Jim, but both of them a little bit, and it's just this, like, it's like this zeroing in on what is the
hmm
issue and how do you fix it, and I mean it's more than I've seen most other people. It's kind of amazing, and I've been over Larry's place a couple of times and like walked through his I don't know what you call that, his workshop or whatever. And it's just like, good Lord. I mean, the last time I
probably
was there, he
bigger.
was showing me actually the new
The
magnetic
Wonder Stick.
releases that they had built
Oh
with
yeah.
like LED lights, and it can go on any angle. I mean, it's incredible. It's kind of, and it's funny. I remember the thing that when he showed it to me going on, I was like, but magnets don't do that. Like, that's not how magnets work.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I know, that was the problem when we came around. It's really, yeah, he's amazing. And I don't think it's so much that, I mean, on many levels, Larry is a genius. There's no question. But
Yeah.
he understands sort of how to get people to move things in the direction that he needs. People who have more information than he does about something, to go, I don't know how all of this works, but it should be able to do this. So how do we, and gets that conversation going. Whereas a lot of people would go, well, it just doesn't do that. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
It has to. There's got to be some way around it. It's amazing.
Yeah, no is not in his vocabulary.
Nope.
We can do it. It's just a matter of time, money, and R&D. That's it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, and that's the reason that, I mean, for anybody who doesn't know him, I would imagine most people listening know, but Larry, from what I understand, what's the showrunner's name?
Amy Sherman Palladino.
Sherman Palladino would come to Jim and say, I want to do this, 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 or this. And Jim would just go, yeah, sure. And then he'd turn around and go, Larry, I don't know. And the two of them would go back and forth and figure it out. And then they'd come up with something.
I mean, there were so many firsts on that show. Just this thing that she coined, the Wonder Stick. I mean, that's incredible. It's really cool. I mean, you could.
Was the first thing that you guys did with that the mail down the chute shot that comes out and goes? Then what do you call that? The operators.
That was the first
switchboard operators. Yep.
Yeah. That was the first Wonder Stick. That was the season I wasn't there, so I caught the next iteration of the Wonder Stick. And actually, on Uhaul, we used the Wonder Stick on some pretty incredible shots. And I think it's really. I mean, he's brilliant, and he is. I'll never be like that. He's left brain, right brain.
Mm-hmm.
He's analytical and also incredibly creative.
Yeah.
And he's, by the way, also the kindest person in the world.
You're talking about Jim or Larry? Because it could be both of them.
It could be both. But, Larry, who's the one who created the remote follow focus for his assistant, Larry Houston. Because, why have probably because there was a shot that it was impossible to have somebody pull focus with a wire.
Yep.
Next to him. And so he, took all the technology he knew and developed this thing. And I have a photo of him with it. It's like, it looks like it looks like a remote control.
You have to send that to me. I haven't seen, I don't think I've seen that. I want to see that. That's absolutely right. But
absolutely will.
But so, just so anybody who doesn't know, and I'll post something on it, the Wonder Stick is basically like, it's a Steadicam base, but the Movi is hanging off of one side and it's on the arm, and you sort of do it sideways so you can stick the camera in between things. And there's the classic thing on season 2 in the opener where the camera basically goes in between a switchboard where all the wires are going in and the ladies who are operating the switchboard, which it's sort of like, I remember when I first saw it, it's like, wait, a camera can't go there. That's not possible. And then
How did they do that?
Well, and the incredible thing is, and then of course, Jim is on headsets and he's operating the camera, Larry's physically putting it in space and then Jim is panning and tilting. And, but the funny thing is actually though, and what, like so many things that I've seen Larry pull off and Jim pull off, you then see what they did and you went, oh, that makes perfect sense. That's actually not that complicated. I mean, it was complicated to get there, but no, that's a really simple, elegant way of doing this shot. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. It's worth checking out. So basically you pretty much moved up to operating then on Maisel. Is that right?
Yeah. I left Maisel, yes. So everybody knew that I wanted to operate, and so I left Maisel, season 4, and started. I did a Hallmark movie as an operator, and
okay, so you'd done something else before you came back there,
I did a couple of I did the 1 or 2 projects as a Steadicam operator, and 1 or 2 features. All of them were features as a conventional operator, and.
What's that like to move up to operating after you've been in the business for a long time. You've left the business, you've come back to the business and sort of started over. You've been doing this for a while. Does that make it easy to jump into the operator seat, or is it still nerve-wracking to jump into the operator seat?
I'd say now at this point it is now I'm really ready to play as an operator. But when I first started, that first season 5 on Maisel, it was definitely nerve-wracking, because It's not just any show. This is Jim McConkey, who's on the A camera, and Gregor was on B, um, and we had Greg Principato on B. I mean, all very good operators.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am in there with these huge shoes and with tiny feet. So yeah, it's nerve wracking. I definitely made mistakes. Amy one day came to me. She's like, "Listen, just make sure if they're talking not to pan away from them." you know, just things that making mistakes in front of Amy Sherman Palladino, who I have so much respect for. She's incredible and a powerhouse.
But is also very specific and demanding, not in a negative way, but she wants things a certain way, I believe, right?
She does, yeah.
Yeah, she knows what she wants, I should say. Yeah.
Precision is a big deal.
Yep.
So yeah, that was challenging. It was definitely challenging. The best part of that season for me is participating in these catch and releases. And we did several of them. That one that went on the internet was one of them, and then there was another one using a wire cam, which was one of my favorites. And then other times, Amy really she didn't want to disrupt the flow of the actors, and I understand. So she really liked to have the shot continue from one room to the other if the actors were walking through. And there's a lot of movement on that show. There's a lot of words and there's a lot of movement. So it really was fun to try to mash what Jim was doing and to push myself.
Yeah.
To push myself to be able to pan, tilt, and dolly the camera and match that precision that this icon of filmmaking. I would teach some of his shots. Jim, not just Larry. Of course, I taught Larry shots in film school, but I would teach the opening to The Cradle Will Rock, which is this big oneer that goes, in and out. And how did the DP do it? I don't know. How did the operator do it? I mean, so it's like, being at that level, I think, is another kind of boot camp, and it was a very loving, kind place to be.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a very, very awesome environment. I feel so lucky to have had that opportunity. I don't know how many people have that opportunity. So
do you remember some of the early hurdles that you had? Was it more just like physical panning and tilting and framing and whatnot, or was it a head game? Like do you psych yourself out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing is to make a decision. Like Henri Bresson, the photographer, the famous photographer, had this quote. He said, "A photograph is the decisive moment," or something like that. And framing the camera is very similar. You have to make the decision, and you can't be indecisive. And my biggest hurdle in the early days was that indecision. Do I want a little more space here, a little more headroom? Do I want, it's the little things.
I don't disagree. I think the hardest thing in the world is not to go, maybe I should be. What if I was? Because if you start doing that floating, then suddenly it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a usable frame. So you're better off sticking with what you got, and then maybe changing it in the next one or whatever. Which doesn't mean, I don't know about you, but it doesn't mean that I'll land a frame and let's say I know I'm going to sit there for a little bit. I'll start looking at it and thinking, I wonder what it would look like if or maybe next time I should, like I'm thinking about it, but you don't want to be doing that. Yeah. Commitment is the hardest thing in the world, and not questioning yourself. I probably told this story before, but I did right after the earthquake in Haiti, the horrible earthquake in 2010. I was there for about 3 weeks, doing this documentary for an amazing organization called Partners in Health. And there was an AP photographer who was there doing a story on them as well. And he and I got to know each other very well. And I'd be filming someone talking or whatever, and he'd be over off to the side. And invariably, we'd sort of like look at each other out of the corner of our eyes. And before we realized it, we'd both switch to the other person's position, like as a usable, piece of, well, for me, piece of the shot and him finding. But we were constantly going, well, he must be over there for some reason.
It must be good.
One day we talked about it, and he was like, "You've noticed that too?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, there's like, I'm always wondering, like, why is he over there? What am I missing?" But I think that's a constant
Wild.
thing that you do,
Yeah.
It's just, and so did you eventually get to a point where you were like, I'm landing frames and I'm comfortable with this, or do you find that you still question that?
I mean, I think we're always I'm always questioning. There are points where I look at the frame and I go, I love this frame. I fucking love this frame. And then if I don't love it, the actor moves a little bit and I get to zhuzh it. They're always, and I mean, especially on the non-procedural that I find myself on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's, there's going to be a million cuts. Etoile, no. And you knew you had to land it. So, the other thing that I learned that I didn't do enough of, and I learn now, and I do a lot, is I do my own rehearsals. If I am doing, some slider, something move, I'll rehearse that move.
Uh-huh.
I'll make sure that I have my dampening set to where I want it in order to land it, in order for,
When you say you do your own rehearsals, meaning like even if the actors aren't doing it, you'll just rehearse the move, or
I'll just rehearse the move and rehearse the move until it's muscle memory. On Maisel it's different, and on Etoile it's different, but on a lot of other shows, especially the the tiers that I end up doing feature wise, a stand-in doesn't necessarily watch what the actor's doing, and so a lot of times you're coaching them and you're reminding them what the action really is. I mean, on Organized Crime, I've got one of the best stand-ins for our number one, Chris Maloney. He'll come to me and he'll say, okay, and so when I look at the blood, where am I looking? Where's my eye line? And he reminds me that, oh shit, I got to set an eye line for him.
That's a complete gift to have.
It's such a gift.
That's fantastic. I worked a bunch with Chris Maloney, and I really enjoyed him. He's a lot of fun. Actually.
He is, and he's so good.
He's not a lot of fun to everybody, but he was a lot of fun to me. You know what I mean? No, I think, you know what it is? I think that he appreciates, there were a lot of us. I think he appreciates people who know what they're doing and work hard.
Yes. Yes.
And he doesn't suffer fools.
He doesn't suffer fools, exactly.
Yeah, he's been doing it too long. That's great though. And well, I should say, I just want to back up. You've mentioned Etoile a couple times. For anybody who's listening to this, because they wouldn't know, depending on when this comes out, that's the new show that they're doing, which is all about ballet in France, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, it has to do with ballet in France and in Paris and in New York.
Okay, gotcha. But it's basically, if you think about Maisel and the fact that it's ballet, I'm sure it's got a lot of crazy moving shots. Actually, Jim and Larry have told me about a couple of them, and I know Larry came out to France for a little while, and it turned into a long while, and all those other things.
Yes, and then he stayed, stayed. I should say that I only worked on the New York portion. I didn't go out to Paris with them. Yeah.
But when you're on a show like that with Larry and Jimmy McConkey, are you constantly picking their brains?
Yeah, I mean, well, so this is what's beautiful about the show, and my involvement in the show. I started, by season 3 and 4, I was the Movi tech and the B camera focus puller. So I was by Jim's side while he was, getting all, doing these really beautiful shots. So yes, I was. And then I was responsible for Larry's gear. So I was going out to his shop and I was helping him organize his stuff, and wow, what a gift. And just to watch them have the shot, work through a shot, or just to watch Jim work through a shot is kind of incredible.
Yeah. From what aspect of it?
This, as a Steadicam operator or a budding Steadicam operator at the time, to watch a veteran Steadicam or seasoned Steadicam operator work through a shot with these incredible actors, with a seasoned showrunner, creator, very brilliant human, to watch him work through the shot to do some of these oneers, it was to watch him work with the actors, to work with Amy,
Mm-hmm.
to talk to Amy, to work with the sound department. I mean, can you imagine being a boom operator
No.
on that show? And they won an Emmy, so they did
Yeah,
it right.
sure.
To watch him work, move the sets around and work with set dress. I mean, it just is
Yeah.
really, it was such a learning experience for me. And it was like a masterclass in every sense of the word.
Is it hard to have really kind of, not that it's where you started, but really, really cut your teeth on a show like that and then go on to other shows that are procedural or something like that? Is that a hard
Well,
adjustment?
no, it was great because I needed, I was watching on the sidelines, it's not even like I'm the like, understudy at that point.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm executing shots. It's not that I'm not. It's just for those big oneers and catch and releases, for example, you need to have a mastermind, a leader who is organizing all of that. And that is
100%.
100% Jim.
Yeah.
And he can operate the wheels like nobody I've ever seen in my life. And I've been doing it for a while. And, I've been in the business for a while. So I've seen a lot of the old guys that all they had were gearheads,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he can just from over there not see where the camera is and be able to
And no.
follow along.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wow.
That's great.
So for me to be sort of the person on the side who's sort of helping and, assisting and move, I have different parts that I'm playing. It's such a gift to be able to leave that knowing all that I know. Like I've just taken all the notes, I was in all these master classes. I just spent 3 years, like
Yeah.
I'm ready. Somebody put me in, coach. I'm ready.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it feels really good to go into a show where I'm used every single day and I'm the B cam or Steadicam operator. So sometimes it's just me.
Yeah.
So I get to, use that muscle and work with like this real powerhouse of a number one, Chris Maloney.
Yeah.
You don't just tell him move over a little bit if you're not sure.
Exactly.
It's a kind of, and that's how actors should be treated.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with respect and
With respect and
not to just ask for something that doesn't need to be done, but that will actually tell the story better and all that. And you were telling me you just worked with Eric LaSalle.
Yeah. So Eric was our episode. So this is going to be the season opener that he directed. And,
Okay.
yeah.
Did he put you through your paces? He likes Steadicam.
He loves Steadicam. Yeah.
He's fantastic.
It's great. I do want to say, if I could just shift gears for a second and talk about, on organized crime, this is my second season on organized crime. So I came in and I replaced John Beatty, who bumped to be the alternating DP. So John Beatty, who's an incredible Steadicam operator, is DPing the show, and he was the Steadicam operator the last time Eric was there. So I have two very critical eyes on my frames and my movement, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but to work under a Steadicam operator, you kind of have to up your game. You can't make excuses. There's no like, oh, the actor went really fast. Yeah, so you pick up your pace.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's no question. I'm not going to say who, but there was a director that I worked with who used to be a very good Steadicam operator, and I was sort of cheating something in the middle of a shot, and I came back and put the dock down, and he looked over at me and he goes, I see what you're doing there. And I said, I'm sure you do, but you would have done the same thing. And he goes, no, I would have. I said, you got a problem with it? He goes, no, I just want to let you know. I see what you're doing there. I said, okay, that's fine. I'm making a shot work. What do you want me to do? But I know
That's
what you
awesome.
mean. The funniest thing is what I always feel like is I always, you're doing the shot and I have to push it out of my head so I can do the shot. But you're thinking like, oh, they're critiquing me and he's wondering why, and I came around the corner of my horizons or this. And the reality is they're directing the show or they're DPing. They're watching the lighting or they're watching unless something massive happens, they're not paying attention to you.
They're not
Everybody's
paying
in their own
attention
head,
Well, no, I gotta say, I'm very lucky. Again, this is another place I feel so lucky in my life to have all the people around me that I do. Like John Beatty is such a kind, uplifting person,
That's the
you
best.
know?
Yeah.
It's the best. We just on Thursday, we just I'm gonna get excited talking about. I did a big crane step off and
Oh,
snake
cool.
through this big oneer. It's Eric LaSalle, so he wants
Eric
to do
Lassell.
this
There you go.
oneer.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Um, and I got to do it, and that was the first time I'd done that, and holy shit, what fun.
It's a
And
rush, right?
it's amazing to get the feedback from somebody who's done it and done it for years and to say, good work, thank you.
That's great.
It feels
That's great.
so good. It
Yeah,
feels
yeah,
really good. And it also makes me push myself. And when I push and I succeed, it feels really good.
yeah.
I feel really lucky.
That's fantastic. And so when you're working with him, do you ask him, like after the shot's over, the scene's over, or whatever? Do you go back and go, "Hey, there's this part of this that I think I could have done better." Like, what do you
Oh,
like?
yeah.
You ask him as a Steadicam operator, I guess is the question. Yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes beforehand, I'll
yeah.
say, so here's the thing. I want this, this, and this. What do you think? Should I do this? But I operate back mount and I operate goofy, and he's a front mounted guy operating regular. So we're sort of in two different worlds. So I think
Hmm.
there's some things that I can I can definitely like push out the rig and move it around. It feels a little bit easier, I think, than it did when I was a front mounted
Sure.
operator
Yeah, yeah.
anyway.
Well, it's a different way to wear the vest. So
Yeah.
concept is the concept is similar, but the execution is different.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah.
That's great though. That's so great to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my favorite thing about Steadicam operating is that everybody tries to pay it forward and give back, and
Oh yeah.
we all want to help everybody else out. But that's great, and it's so great to hear you're working with Eric LaSalle. He's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite directors, one of my favorite actors, just across the board. And he used to get so excited when we would do big Steadicam shots. He just loved
Oh,
it. It was a blessing. And then
yeah.
you worked
It's
on
awesome.
Day of the Fight, right?
Yes. So the best compliment I ever got is after being David Mullen and Alex Nepniameshki's B
Oh,
camera operator.
I love Alex
Uh, yes.
and David, I should say.
Yeah. They're very talented.
I just
I
forgot
mean,
Alex was on the show for what, one season? Did he do one
no, since season 3.
since
He came
season
on.
three?
Yep.
Oh, I
3,
didn't realize.
4, half of season 3, 4, 5, and then he uh, was also on Etoile.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic! That's amazing. He's incredible.
So after all of that, Jim calls me up again and says, "Do you want to come and be B camera on Day of the Fight? It's going to be a little bit different than Maisel. You'll probably work a lot more shots." And so that was really cool
Yeah,
to have him recommend me for other jobs, and also to have him ask me to come and work with him again and to come back on Etoile. I mean, that's like the highest compliment that I could get.
that's great. That's
Um,
fantastic. Well, Day of the Fight was absolutely beautiful. I love the
oh
work
yeah,
both of you did in that movie. It was just
yeah.
such, and not to mention the black and white in that movie is
Oh,
just gorgeous. Was that shot on film or video or digital?
that was shot on an Arri 35.
It was okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure, but yeah, uh, it was. Yeah, it's a beautiful. Anybody who hasn't seen it should check it out. And there's some really wonderful framing, and the framing is
Mhm.
beautiful. The camera movement is beautiful. Everything
The
about it,
movement is gorgeous.
great.
Yeah, that's all
It's just
Jim, man. He
yeah,
sets that tone and he guides that frame. It's just amazing. It was really
fantastic.
cool to watch him work under different circumstances with different people. And Jack Houston, who was a director of that show, is also a very impassioned human. He's so passionate about he feels it. He feels everything, and it was beautiful. It's beautiful
Yeah,
to watch
that's great.
it come
That's
together.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So eventually, you see yourself moving to a camera. Is that something you want to do, or
From your lips to God's ears.
it'll happen? It'll happen.
No, I do. I really do. I mean, I feel like it's interesting because you're catching me mid-career here. I mean, I'm a young Steadicam operator, but not young in age. So,
One has nothing to do with the other. It just means you know more. And like as you look at that, what do you think the big hurdles are going to be today?
just like getting to be full-time Steadicam on a show, it is really going to be somebody who's going to have to take a jump in believing me. I haven't, I've done A on a feature, but I haven't done A on a show. I would love to come do A on another feature. I mean, it really is just somebody trusting and believing
Uh-huh.
that I can do it. Yeah.
And when you did the feature, did you find that, I mean, most of it was just the mental aspect of it, and like being involved in running the set and keeping things moving and working with the AD and all that stuff? Or was that similar to being on B?
That was most of it. I mean, I kind of love doing that kind of stuff. I have a lot of respect for directors and actors, and I'm a kind person, and I believe we all have to work together. And I'm not the kind of person who's going to be adverse to be, to cause any friction with an AD. I'm going to, we're all working towards the same common goal. So, the thing that was different about it was, what I was working on for that was just, I don't know how to say this. So just to do it gracefully and be kind,
Uh-huh.
because there's a lot of pressure there. There's a pressure to get the second camera where it needs to go, and to get the boom, and to get sound to have sound be happy, and to make sure that we're getting everything that we need, and that we're doing it on time,
Uh-huh.
and that the DP is happy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's someone I know who just recently, he just recently moved up to camera operating from being a dolly grip. And I interviewed him and I asked him, I said, what's the biggest thing? And he said, I just didn't recognize how exhausting it is. And he said, I'm not talking physically. I'm just talking, there's never a moment where you're not thinking about something. Because even if you're done with everything, you're trying to realize, like, what did I miss, or what's coming next, or whatever. It just doesn't stop. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things that as I'm getting older, I realize, because I'm like, why am I so exhausted when I got home? Like, I sat on the dolly all day, and it's just like, no, because it's mentally exhausting to just keep all these balls in the air, right? It's
Well, here's a question for you.
yeah.
When you were on West Wing, how would you keep it, with an ensemble cast, and when you were around a room with 8 people,
Yeah.
and with one camera, how did you keep it together? How did you know which side of the line you were covering for which conversation? I mean, did you map it out? Did you have
No,
diagrams?
I'm really weird with the line. I can't tell you if someone needs to look camera right or camera left. Like if you said, are they looking left or right? What I can't tell you, but I can turn my body around and they got to look that way. I just sort of, and I think what I do, because I'm visual, is I sort of look at, an overview of the room, and I have like little lines that are drawn between people. But even generally speaking, if we were in the Roosevelt room and there were 8 people sitting at the table, yeah, there are a lot of lines there, but there's still the center line down the table, and you're sort of on one side or the other, except for maybe some specific things. And with those, I would usually go to our script supervisor Hillary, and I go, okay, so how we and the director obviously and the DP, but so where are we deciding these lines are, what's going to cut against what or whatever. And I don't know, it's a weird thing that I've always been very lucky with, is I just, and it's funny because every once in a while I will mess up, and someone will go, are we supposed to be on the other side of the line? And I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, I don't even know how that happened. I'll pop over there. But I will tell you the thing that used to trip me up a lot more until I just learned to trust it was, and I wish I still had this somewhere, when I was on ER, and I started ER when I was 25, and I didn't know at all.
So cool.
I didn't know at all what I was doing. I shouldn't have been there. But and my big thing was, I was always worried about matching a shot on someone in the reverse. And I can't draw, but I had this flip up, like the notebook that you would keep your homework in when you were a kid. And I would draw these, I had these little boxes and stick figures.
Yeah.
And so you'd see their like feet, you'd see their legs, or you'd see their middle, or the whatever. And that's how I would sort of guess at what it was, because for some reason I thought you had to remember every frame. And then I eventually started some point just realizing, like, oh no, you just sort of like just sort of move the camera until it feels right, and that
Mm-hmm.
tends to be where it is. But that was my big thing. That for whatever reason, the line, and it's possible that it's because when we were doing ER, we were constantly moving, and so I didn't have to think about the line as much, but I had to be sort of cognizant of it at the same time. So it wasn't as.
Right.
So I think by the time I got through a couple of years of that, like something just sunk in. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
What a cool show to have at 25. Holy shit.
well, like we were talking about earlier, there's no way that I realized how lucky I was at the time. I mean,
Oh,
I'm sure on
so
some
cool.
level I was overwhelmed by it and whatnot. And I will tell you, I've said this here before, like so many other things. I don't think I moved all my stuff, not that I had that much stuff, onto the truck for 2 weeks because I just assumed I was getting fired every day. I mean, literally, I remember going home after the first day and going, well, I mean, clearly I'm not coming back.
Oh,
But I'm
man.
going to get like a day, like we did some cool stuff that's going to be in my reel. And then, of course, my name was on the call sheet. And it's like, oh, okay. I'll get 2 days out of it. This is great, isn't it? So, yeah, it just, I was in so far over my head. But like you were saying on Maisel and whatever, I had wonderful, wonderful people who really picked, who made sure that I didn't fail until I was able to actually do the work.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fair amount of probably stupidity involved and not realizing, like, you know, I think it would be very different now because this was all pre-internet, you know, or maybe there wasn't any internet. No, well, actually, that's not true because the way I
mean,
got the show was I IM'd Guy B, but there wasn't like, it wasn't where, I mean, this was back when people are going to be shocked by this, but like if you wanted to get on the internet, you had to like dial up the phone and went ding, ding, ding. So you didn't have it on all the time. You didn't have a phone. So I don't think I knew it was big, but I don't think I understood what it actually was, you know? So anyway, which is a blessing in disguise, but whatever. Yeah, it was a cool thing to be part of. But well, listen, this was so great to sit and talk to you and hear all this and hear your story. And like, what an amazing story. I just love the fact that, I mean, literally, like most people kind of meander a little bit, but like you literally like checked out and came back and came back in, by the way, and not where you left off and sort of like restarted, which is so impressive. It's, and clearly, you know, you're nowhere near the end of your career by the people that you're working with and the stuff you're working on. So I'm excited to see other stuff, but I will leave you with,
I have to knock on wood.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
everybody knock on wood. No, I don't think we need to, but you should. This business, nothing is nothing. But but I'll leave you with the thing that I leave everybody with, which is advice for someone getting into the business now on how to succeed, and or maybe what you wish you knew back in the day that you know now.
I think that in order to succeed, whatever task that you have in front of you, you should do it to the very best of your abilities, because that shows everybody around you that when it comes time to do the thing that you really want to do, that you're going to do it to the very best of your abilities. So, you know, I don't care what it is, wrangling cable, if it is learning how to wrangle cable, or if it is making a stupid cup of coffee, just make the best stupid cup of coffee you could possibly make and wrangle that cable. Learn how to wrangle that cable, because that demonstrates who you are, and learn your craft. It's beautiful. Oh my God, this business, we're making make-believe. How amazing, how lucky we are to do what we do and to be able to do what we do.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.